Another big-time wide receiver getting paid, not Deebo Samuel, but how does the new Terry McLaurin contract in Washington affect the next Deebo Samuel extension, if that does indeed get done in the next few weeks, as George Kittle thinks will happen? Some comments about Jimmy Garoppolo's value and if he'll even get a starting job in 2022. And as we teased earlier on in the week, worst trade in NFL history are the 49ers part of that conversation. All that coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker with you. If you're new to the show, hi, I'm Brian Peacock, NFL analyst, also the co-host of the Peacock and Williamson NFL show daily here on the Locked On Podcast Network. My co-host, Eric Crocker, former NFL, AFL defensive back, Arena Bowl champion, and the co-host. He's also doing double duty here on the network, the co-host of the Locked On NFL Draft podcast at BD Peacock, at Eric_Crocker. Thanks for making Locked On 49ers your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Big news, Croc, with another wide receiver making big time cash. How does this affect Deebo Samuel's negotiation right now? According to Adam Schefter, a new 3-year extension for Terry McLaurin that includes $28 million signing bonus, the largest given to any wide receiver, and also has 76.4% of the new money in the deal guaranteed. Odd number, 76.4. So going over 75% of the money guaranteed. We'll see what's actually guaranteed, what is sometimes there's guarantees that aren't 100% guaranteed. The deal contractually ties the 26-year-old McLaurin to Washington through the 2025 season. So how you feeling about this one, Croc? And do you think that it changes anything with what kind of money Deebo Samuel is going to get, or just another wide receiver that Deebo's agent says, okay, cool, got to beat that too?
So real quick, just so I can clarify this, essentially it's a 3-year extension.
Yeah, which I think is super interesting because the 4th year of the A.J. Brown extension, which a lot of people want to compare to what Deebo Samuel will get, which I agree with, except that the 4th year on the A.J. Brown extension's got this balloon $38 million year, which seems really unlikely that he'll see whether it's going to be a restructure or he has to get released before that. We saw that with the Tyreek Hill extension. So when you see those reports about, average annual value for a contract, is it really that? Because these receivers probably won't see the last year of that deal. But for McLaurin, I think it's structured in a way, it sounds like, I haven't seen the exact numbers of this deal. It's structured in a way that you might actually get to the end of it, which I think is the way the 49ers would rather do business.
Well, the reason why I asked is because McLaurin and Deebo Samuel are kind of similar in the sense of they are older guys getting their first contract. Like you said, Terry McLaurin is 26. He turns 27 in September. So at the start of the season, he'll be 27 years old. So if you're saying he's 27 now, by the time he reaches that 3rd year, he'll be like 30 years old, right? So, that's where it's kind of interesting. I wonder if the 49ers will structure something similar for Deebo because he also is an older receiver getting his first contract. Like you talked about A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown's like 3 years younger than Deebo and McLaurin.
Yeah, and DK Metcalf, I think, is even younger than all of them. Might get a new deal. Yeah. So DK can do a 5-year contract, still get his next deal before he's 30 for McLaurin. And I wonder if his agent would want to maximize the money they can get now, but also set it up to where he can get another payday right before 30 or right at 30, rather than going into free agency at age 32. Might be a little bit more difficult to find that big money deal.
Right. So, and that was the one thing where I'm like, I wonder if 49ers would do something similar like that for Deebo Samuel. But just in the sense of kind of the contract and the way it's structured, the money, I do think that's something that they're giving Deebo the outline for how he should structure his contract. You've seen what A.J. Brown got. You've seen what Terry McLaurin got. Obviously, we see the year that Deebo Samuel had, which is higher end than both of those guys, what they've done. But those guys have been fairly consistent throughout the first 3 years, and they've been overall more productive. So I think Deebo's money should be somewhere in the same ballpark as those two guys. So I feel like there's less question about like where Deebo should be contractually.
Yeah,
I think now it should be a little bit more cut dry. All right, this is what this guy got. This is what this guy got, and that was what I always thought. It's what's AJ Brown getting, what's Terry McLaurin getting, what's DK Metcalf getting, and once you figure out what those guys get, then you'll get hopefully push for a little bit more, but it shouldn't be too much more to where now they should be able to iron out the contract.
Right. Like he'll get $500,000 more per year. So, if the number was 24.5, it'll be 25. If the number was 23.5, it'll be 24. If the number was 25, it'll be 25.5 kind of thing, where he's just kind of beat what I'm sure Deebo's going to beat and try to beat, especially what Terry McLaurin got.
What'd you say his signing bonus was?
$28 million signing bonus, but then 76.4% of the deal is guaranteed. And I think that's structure is really the key here with the Deebo thing. And 49ers like to structure contracts a certain way. So maybe that's where some push and pull is. And I'm sure Deebo, and if I was Deebo's agent, I'd be trying to get as much guaranteed as possible. That'd be almost more important than the dollar amounts per year. And I know agents love to throw out there, hey, he got highest paid whatever ever and this much per year. But to me, if I'm Deebo, I think the guarantees are more important. I'd rather get guaranteed at $24 million than have $25 million not guaranteed.
Right. And that might be what maybe the holdup was, or the disrespect. Maybe they came in, they're like, $40 million guaranteed. And he's like, F you guys. Like,
nothing guaranteed. $10 million guaranteed. Like, here's big money, but we're not going to guarantee it. And maybe that's what the negotiation is like. Okay, look, if you want to go to $25 million, we're not going to guarantee as much. If you want to go lower to the number we had, $23 million, maybe we'll throw more guarantees at you. So I'm sure that's what part of this is. And I think they'll hopefully get a deal done. It seems like they'll get a deal done here before training camp, but the outline is there because of these other contracts. So it shouldn't be that hard. It's just the structure now that you got to figure out, to me. Do you pay, like, does Deebo, because where would you rent if you were a GM and all four of these guys were free agents, right? Who would you sign and who gets because I feel like DK should get the most money. And I think he will get the most money in the end, but it's almost like you want your guy to sign last because then you can ask for the most. And so right. If Deebo would have signed first, if they would have signed Deebo in December, it might have 21 million, 19 million, right? Like what kind of money would he have gotten before free agency started? Then free agency happened. Would he have gotten less than what AJ Brown got if they would have signed him before the draft? If once Brown signed, does he have to get more than Brown, or should he get less than Brown because his track record, I don't think, is as good as Brown, but he had that one great season. So that's where it gets really difficult because the comp is really hard because Deebo's had the best season, but he's only done it once, where Brown, McLaurin, DK, multiple 1,000-yard receiving seasons.
Yeah, well, basically what you're saying is before last season, Deebo would have gotten the least amount of money. But then he has this season that is so far ahead of anything any of these other guys have done, and obviously the postseason success that Deebo Samuel has had as well, kind of doing it in the bright lights, seeing him in that moment, it just kind of like creates more of the legend that Deebo Samuel is. But yeah, you look at some of these numbers, and Terry McLaurin is like, wait, hold on. I know Deebo had a great year, but I've had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. He's had a ton of catches. The production overall throughout his 3 years, he has over 3,000 yards receiving and 16 touchdowns. Now, 16 touchdowns. Deebo had 14 last year when you combine his rushing, and that's what's going to make things a little bit more difficult. But the other receivers definitely have been more productive over their entirety of their career so far, but Deebo had that 1 year. I don't know how you do it, but somebody's going to have to get paid the most, and I think it's the guy that signs last.
And it seems like it's not this easy, but it seems like the guarantees would be so important that it would fix everything, right? Because then you don't have to worry about the rushing totals as much, and you can just be free, and Kyle can call the plays because the money's guaranteed. If you get hurt, the money's guaranteed, right? And I'm sure Deebo wants longevity as well, so he probably still doesn't want to have a lot of carries. But if you're the player trying to negotiate while dictating how you're going to be used, then to me, I can't, then there's got to be give and take. If you're going to dictate that, well, I'm going to dictate something else, which is money, right? Or guarantees. So which is it? Do you want the guarantees and we use you however we want, or you're going to dictate that? And so then there goes part of the guarantees. So I think that's some of the difficulties here. And I think they got to be probably pretty close as far as just what the overall money is going to look like at this point.
Yeah.
But wow, way to dodge my question, by the way, Croc, of which order you put those guys in. You don't want to piss off
Deebo at
49ers
one.
fans. Okay, Deebo won.
Yeah, Deebo at one. You're not going to turn them against me today.
All right, good stuff. Good stuff. Next, let's talk about Jimmy Garoppolo. Interesting comments from 49ers beat writer Matt Mayoko on Jimmy Garoppolo's prospects of starting for anybody in 2022. And we've teased it earlier this week. Worst trades in NFL history. Are the 49ers part of that conversation? First, I want to let the folks out there know about Rock Auto. The ever-increasing numbers of makes and models. Your local chain store can't carry everything you need, but you know who can carry everything you need is rockauto.com, as I found out recently. And I didn't realize, I'm not a car guy, I didn't realize how much of a do-it-yourselfer I am. I was able to replace a part that I didn't think was something that would be in my capability. So instead of spending $500 taking it into the dealership, right, I was able to buy the part for $40, slap it on there myself. So I'm going to be a little bit more gutsy about making some repairs to my vehicle, knowing how easy it is and knowing that a place like Rock Auto has everything you need and they have it in stock. Unbelievable selection at rockauto.com. Go check it out for yourself. Why pay 50%, 100% more for the same parts at your chain store? Plus, if you take it to the dealership, the insane amount of expensive labor that you're going to be paying for something that you could fix yourself. And they might not have it in stock. You might not have your car for a week because they're waiting for that to be in stock, but rockauto.com does have it in stock. Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers and professionals alike for over 20 years. Rock Auto prices are always reliably low for every customer. Big parts, small parts, fender flares, as I recently replaced on my vehicle, brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, new carpet for the interior of your car. You can find all of it at rockauto.com. So go there right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck, right locked on in the How Did You Hear About Us box, so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com. Thanks again, everybody, for making Locked On 49ers your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure you're checking out the rest of that the network has to offer, including Croc doing Locked On NFL Draft. I'm doing the Peacock and Williamson show every day. Subscribe to the Locked On NFL channel. We've got tons of stuff going on here on the network.
Hey, Peacock.
Yes.
One more thing on those receivers. I didn't know A.J. Brown, his rookie year, he went over 1,000 yards. He went over 1,000 yards his first 2 years. Not well over it, though. 1,051, 1,075. He averaged 20 yards per reception his rookie year.
He was nuts right out of the gate, man. And that's where...
And DK Metcalf, he has 22 touchdown catches over the last 2 seasons. He had 12 last season. And he was just shy of 1,000 yards.
Yeah, I mean, DK's freaky, man. All three of these, all four of those guys are so good. It's really difficult, and they all have their own argument, and they all win in different ways. But Deebo was so important. Like his biggest argument is like, okay, have fun in this offense without me. And I don't think, I mean, as important as A.J. Brown was, as important as DK Metcalf has been, those teams can operate without those guys. You know, it won't be as good. But, man, Deebo was everything to the 49ers last year.
Everything.
That year.
Kickoff returner, quarterback, running back, receiver, slot, outside. Man.
Insane. And maybe with a more dynamic quarterback, that won't be the case. So that's what the 49ers are hoping, that they don't have to run Deebo Samuel into the ground and get him all these carries. So an interesting negotiation there for sure for the 49ers and Deebo. Hopefully that gets done before camp. Will Jimmy Garoppolo get traded before camp? Will he be on another roster? Will he be on the 49ers roster? We still don't have clarity there, although I have a really good feeling that at some point, if they can't work out a trade, Jimmy Garoppolo will be released and he will not enter camp with the 49ers once he is cleared to throw. But according to Matt Mayoko, who was on the air with local radio KNBR, he had an interesting quote when asked about Jimmy G. And it's not too surprising at this point. It's hard to find where the 49ers would get, a nice trade value for him, right? But there is still a couple teams. There's some things that could potentially make sense there. It seems at this point, at least as likely, if not more, that he would be just released and the 49ers would take that $25 million and roll that into next season, because I think a lot of the trade options would be the 49ers taking on more money. So I don't know if that would make sense, right? We talked about that earlier this week. What is $9 million of cap space worth in draft picks? If you're taking on half of Sam Darnold's salary, for example, something like that. So it just makes those kind of trades even more difficult because of the salaries involved with some of the quarterbacks out there, including Jimmy G's $25 million, that the best thing the 49ers can get at this point is maybe just rolling over that $25 million into next year when they can pay Deebo and Bosa with those salaries. But Mayoko told Tolbert and Copes in the afternoon on KNBR yesterday that, quote, I can't see him right now being a starting quarterback for any team. I mean, Jimmy, like, for all Jimmy G's faults, he's one of the best 32 starters in the NFL. And there are teams right now that are going to roll out a worse starting quarterback than Jimmy Garoppolo. And I find it hard to believe that the 49ers released him and those teams could negotiate any contract they want with a free agent starting caliber quarterback in Jimmy Garoppolo. He'd be a free agent for about 5 seconds, and he would end up starting for one of those teams. Like, he's going to beat out Drew Lock and Geno Smith. He's going to beat out Sam Darnold. He's going to beat out Jacoby Brissett, who he's already beat out before on an NFL roster. So I disagree with Mayoko on that, but at this point, it's hard to pick which team it would be. And I guess it is possible that he doesn't win that job in camp. He's not been the best camp player. And if no team felt strong enough about Jimmy G to trade for him, then maybe nobody feels strong enough about him being a starter. So are we going to see the beginning of Jimmy Garoppolo being a journeyman number 2 quarterback in the NFL, Croc?
It's hard to envision him as a journeyman quarterback, but I'm looking at some numbers here. And Jimmy G, you got to remember the last time that people have seen him, right, which is the postseason. It ain't really great. You look at 2021 postseason, I'm looking at it right now. He played 3 games. He completed 58% of his passes. He had 2 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. I mean, all the averages are down. He's not. I think we look at him because the 49ers just win with him. But other teams are probably like, I mean, okay, do we have the 49ers defense to bring along with him? Do we have Deebo Samuel to bring along with him? Do we have Kyle Shanahan to bring along with him? If not, how much more can we get out of him, what we've seen, especially with the last time we've seen him? And that's me looking at it from maybe these other teams' perspective. Like, how much better is this to what they have? Now, maybe if they look at what he's done in his entirety as a 49er, but again, there's a lot of weird moments. And I think we can look to some of the high moments. People are talking about a dominant performance that Jimmy G has had. A lot of people point to the New Orleans Saints game, and we've seen some of those. I pointed out like an Arizona Cardinal game. But good quarterbacks, I feel like they have more of those type of games, like when you're good, right? And I do agree with you that he is 100% a top 32 quarterback in the league. Hell, he might even be better than Trey Lance. I mean, obviously you hope to get better, but there's a scenario where Jimmy is better, right? But what these teams, in the sense of how they're viewing him and how they're prioritizing potentially trading for him or signing him to be their starter, the last thing that they saw, it wasn't great.
You know what's also insane? I'm looking at Jimmy Garoppolo's numbers right now. His 2 healthy seasons with the 49ers, 2 healthy full seasons. And really his 5 games when he came in 2017 were very similar too. When you look at him statistically, I think a little bit better as far as, yards per attempt and stuff like that. But, still too many interceptions, right? His 2019 season and his 2020 season, or his 2021 season, within 100, less than 200 yards apart, 3,800 yards, 3,810 yards last year, 68.3 completion percentage. 69% completion percentage in 2019, 3,978 yards. So just shy of 4,000 yards both seasons, 68 versus 69% passer, 13 interceptions to 12 interceptions, right? It's a remarkable how similar he's been since he showed up. And so you kind of know at this point exactly what you're getting in Jimmy Garoppolo, which is better than, what Sam Darnold gives you, better than what Drew Lock has given teams in the NFL. But it's clearly not someone that teams are tripping all over themselves to get. So it's a fascinating one. I do disagree, though, with Mayoko. If he's cut, he gets signed probably by the Seahawks tomorrow and is their starting quarterback in week 1. That's what I think.
Well, so I just think it's hard to just be like, oh, you're going to come in and be our starter. Because, again, one, you kind of got to they got to make it some type of competition between him, maybe even him, Geno, and Drew Lock. Right? Which sounds crazy. It sounds wild. But Geno's been there for a few years now. They know him. He knows the system. He played in a little bit of games last season. Nothing too crazy, which was still like a plus by, DK still getting 12 touchdown receptions. But you have to kind of make them fight it out a little. And even then, I think the bigger question is, all right, let's say we are signing him to be our starting quarterback. So now it's just like, all right, Drew Lock, you step to the back of the line. Gino, you step to the back of the line. And Jimmy G, who is notably not a great practice quarterback. I've seen it in person. You've seen it. Everyone has talked about it. I mean, he has the practice where he throws 5 straight interceptions, like literally 5 consecutive interceptions. Again, it's practice. Maybe he's trying something new. But is that what's going to win you the starting quarterback job? Or is that what's going to win you over the Seahawk players who are like, hey, he's been throwing us the ball for years now? You know?
Right. Yeah, it's funny. It like, if you think about, because it sounds like maybe Geno Smith might be winning the job over Drew Lock already based on spring stuff. But Geno Smith's been in a Seattle offense for a while. He knows the offense better, at least to begin training camp, right? For sure. And if Jimmy Garoppolo is competing with him, Geno knows the offense better. Jimmy doesn't have a better arm or anything, you know? So what's that thing that's going to win you the job? It would have to take a little while, right? And so I could see how
great leadership.
I could see how Jimmy Garoppolo is not a starting quarterback. Yeah, like how quickly can you leader your way into the starting job there? Like, show up in like the second day, he's like, oh, look at this great leader. After 2 days, he's the starter now.
Well, he did do that kind of 2017. Like he stepped in and that was how they felt. Remember, I mean, it was like obviously he was there for a month before he played.
Was competent. There was like that's one of the problems with Jimmy G is like there's not really a lot of comparisons we've been able to make because on the 49ers roster, it's either been Jimmy G or straight garbage with Kyle Shanahan, right? Like he's better than CJ Beathard and he's better than Nick Mullins. Well, there's a big gap. Like he's not as good as Tom Brady, who he played on the same roster with, right? So the only really good comparison we have is he was ahead of Jacoby Brissett. And if the Browns are going to start Jacoby Brissett, you would think that Jimmy Garoppolo would be better there. And Jacoby Brissett hasn't put up any numbers or helped the team win many games in the NFL, and he's gotten some opportunities now to show who he is. So I would, it's clearly a number 2, and I think that Jimmy Garoppolo is a better quarterback than him. But it's hard because Jimmy Garoppolo is somewhere between Tom Brady and CJ Beathard or Nick Mullins. Like that's a big gap. How good is Jimmy Garoppolo? And that's what we'll start to find out is what Trey Lance looks like in now Kyle Shanahan's offense and what Jimmy Garoppolo will look like in another offense potentially. We might learn a lot about both Shanahan and Jimmy G about where their value is and how good they are. But I gotta believe, like I would at least put money down. If you gave me even money, he's going to start for a team or not start for a team. I put money that Jimmy G starts on a team.
If they go off of his postseason, if they go off of what he's done in postseasons, that they got to go off of something else because he averaged he's thrown in his career. This is for his career in the postseason. All right, just his averages: 60% passer, way down from what he's done in the regular season. 137 yards per game. Now, part of that is skewed because he had the one game against Green Bay where he just didn't throw the ball. So let's take out 2019 and just look at what he did 2021. 178 passing yards a game. And 4 touchdowns throughout his time in the postseason. 6 interceptions. Like that doesn't, to me, that doesn't scream someone who could really help me get over the top. It almost screams somebody that was, Kyle did a really good job with this guy.
You're not wrong, Croc, about those numbers for Jimmy Garoppolo in the playoffs. But I think the argument's simpler than that, where you're talking to a fan base or you're talking to a head coach for the Panthers, for the Browns, with what the Browns have gone through for the last 20 years. And their response would be like, we get to play in the playoffs? Give me that quarterback. Give me a quarterback that completes 0 passes, throws 12 interceptions in the playoffs because I get to play in the playoffs, right?
Right.
That's kind of the
But
argument.
how does he get to the play? I think that's, and again, I'm probably contradicting myself a lot because I look at it like, yeah, Jimmy Garoppolo, like you'll be in the playoffs. I've said this to Washington Commander fans. I'm like, dude, y'all would definitely want Jimmy G over Taylor Heineke because you'll be in the playoffs with Jimmy G. But then you look at some of these things and they're just like it looks a little weird.
And Jimmy G's teams are beating Aaron Rodgers' teams in the playoffs, even when they get there, too.
Dude, when the 49ers, we were all complaining about the 49ers finding their identity. And do you remember what their identity was?
defense and running the ball.
Running the ball 40 times. Like you told your quarterback, for us to win, we have to run the ball 40 times.
I think there's some of that is overblown because if a team can't stop you running the ball, why would you do anything else? So that's part of it. It's not like, oh, we're getting 1.5 yards per carry and we're still running the ball. They were just killing them running the ball. We don't have to do
but that's what people said the identity was. It was like 49ers were trying to find their identity. Then they had 3 games where they rattled off 40 carries per game, and then there's all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's how they win. Run the ball 40 times. I get what you're saying. Like, if you run 40 times, you're probably ahead. You probably get to run the ball more, and okay, it's working. But that's what people are saying. Oh, that's their identity, because whatever they were doing before was not working.
I will say this.
And that was maybe putting a little bit too much on Jimmy Garoppolo.
Cleveland Browns, really good defense. Two-headed monster at running back, running the heck out of the football. That's their identity too. Stefanski's offense, 2 tight ends, right? West Coast terminology, the same Kubiak tree terminology that Jimmy Garoppolo is already used to. I mean, ideal fit with the Cleveland Browns, in my opinion. I just think it works perfectly. If they want to win now that they know they're not going to have Deshaun Watson, most likely first season, 1-year guy, perfect fit, Jimmy G. So I do think Jimmy G gets a starting role somewhere, but it's certainly possible that he doesn't. We will see. There's certainly arguments for both sides of that, but if he gets cut, he's going to get snapped up pretty darn quick, I think.
I bet people are probably like, Croc, you're hella confused. You don't know if you like Jimmy G. You don't know if you don't. I don't know. I'm just trying to make sense of all this, guys.
Well, you've always had both of those things going on with Jimmy G. That's definitely an internal struggle with Croc, because he talks about how he wouldn't want any other quarterback in the fourth quarter.
Right.
So anyway, we got to move on to some other subjects, namely the worst trade in NFL history. You've asked this question in the past, and I got some interesting comments about it. Are the 49ers in that conversation, even very recently, too? So we'll get to that next. I got to let the folks out there know about Bet Online. You want to bet on those San Francisco 49ers to win the Super Bowl? You can do so. You can bet on Nick Bosa's sack numbers if you want. You can bet on Trey Lance MVP, Kyle Shanahan, Coach of the Year. Tons of NFL futures at Bet Online, your number one source for all your betting needs and sports information this season. Find all the latest developments, league reviews, including NHL playoff. Well, NHL playoffs are over, but Major League Baseball is still ongoing. Tons of fights. We got celebrity boxing happening, live betting, esports, scores, and more. Bet Online remains the best spot for not only just sports wagering, but sports scores, news this season. So get over to the website today. Use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action at Bet Online, where the game starts. All right, Croc, I'm about to lose my voice over here, so we got to wrap this thing up pretty quick, but I want to go to one listener that said this when I had talked, and by the way, we'll get into some of the Herschel Walker stuff, and Peacock and Williamson NFL show from earlier this week, we asked this question, and we went through the details of the Ricky Williams trade, the Herschel Walker trade, and what those looked like. And because we asked the question, is the Deshaun Watson trade already, and he hasn't even played a game for them, the worst trade in NFL history? But I got this comment, and I want to run it by you, Croc, if I can find it. And a couple of nominees from 49ers history. Daryl says, worst 49ers trade ever, trading Hall of Fame defensive end Charles Haley to the Cowboys, shifted the power in the NFL. A close second was trading first-team All-Pro Defoe to the Colts for a draft pick. Stupid. 49ers still trying to regain that 2019 defensive line form. And Croc, I didn't think about when I was asking these questions earlier, and I've got another nominee, by the way, from the 49ers trades. I didn't think about the Charles Haley trade. And that was a big one. That one hurt the 49ers. And absolutely.
Why would they do that?
The power to the Cowboys. I think personalities was part of it.
Well, I know, but why would you trade him to Dallas?
Right. Of all teams.
You knew the struggles you were having. Like, you knew you knew what was going on there. Like, why would you trade him to them? Like, I feel like it's, hey, Charles Haley's available. Who wants him? Anybody except for Dallas.
You can't do it, right? That's like one of those things like, you just can't do that. You can't trade Charles Haley to the Cowboys of all. Trade him to the Vikings, fine. Don't trade him to the Cowboys in 1990. What was it? What year was that? Whatever it was. Anytime in the 90s. Don't trade Charles Haley to the stinking Cowboys. It shifted the power for sure.
For as smart as was Bill Walsh the GM at that time?
That was post Bill Walsh, but he was around, I think. I don't know. It felt like the 49ers just like they made so many moves and they were so they believed in their process so much that if it was time to trade this guy and we got value for him, that it's the right move to do. And we think it's the right move, so we're going to do it. And sometimes it's the moves you don't make. And I think that was maybe part of it. And I know Charles Haley is, personality stuff. Maybe he wore the 49ers a little too thin at some point. But man, yeah, that's too much of a difference making player to trade to your rival that you're trying to go beat in the playoffs.
Right.
So pretty bad. No, I think that is the worst trade in 49ers history. But there was another nomination, and this nomination was not only for the worst trade in 49ers history. This is the worst trade in NFL history. One of the listeners said that the worst trade in NFL history was the 49ers spending 3 first-round picks in 2021, 2022, and 2023 to trade for a completely unproven quarterback that didn't play that year from an FCS school, that was just an insanely stupid trade, and that is actually the worst trade in NFL history. And they're talking about this being not so much because of what the hindsight results were look like, because we don't know what those draft picks are going to become. And it's kind of the same with the Deshaun Watson trade. We don't know how the picks that the Texans got back are going to look, because that's what made the Herschel Walker trade look so bad, is that the Cowboys built a Super Bowl powerhouse off of the back of one of these trades. But at the time, Croc, does the Trey Lance trade up just based on the trade happening at the time, when you explain it to someone who doesn't know 49ers, doesn't know Trey Lance, the prospect necessarily, but when you look at it that way on paper, 3 first-round picks, FCS school guy, didn't even play the season before he was drafted, trading all that for an unknown, is that worse than trading for a guy who's got off-field stuff like Deshaun Watson that is already a great quarterback?
I still think that the Deshaun Watson one was worse. Even though he was a great quarterback, there was a lot coming out. There was a lot that continued to come out. And the backlash that your organization would take on by bringing in a player like that or trading for a player like that, I mean, they get clowned every single day for that. So that's got to be worse than the Trey Lance one. Now, I do understand where he's coming from, though. When you say it out loud, you're using 3 first-round picks on a kid. I could see how that would be a little. People could be like, okay, now why would you do that? Especially when you have Jimmy Garoppolo, who you've won games with.
Not a great process. And the 49ers even admitted that they overpaid to move up to number 3 to have their choice, right? And so, even the 49ers knew they overpaid. So process, maybe not great. And I always go back to them saying, well, we liked all 3 quarterbacks that were going to be available for us at number 3. It's like, okay, we'll trade up to number 5 then. Right after the other 2 quarterbacks are off the board, it was completely unnecessary that they did that. But then when we look back, in reality, it's a hindsight thing. And when we look back, even though the process maybe wasn't great, if Trey Lance is great, it was a great trade. If Trey Lance is not great, and if he's a disaster of a quarterback, you're going to get yourself fired. And yeah, it might start to look a lot worse. But process not great, right. But process way worse for the Browns. You're not losing fans over it. The Herschel Walker trade, Vikings fans weren't like, oh my God, you traded for this player. I'm not even going to be a fan of your team anymore. Right. And that's what's going on with the Cleveland Browns and the Deshaun Watson stuff. So the Deshaun Watson one right now to me is with a bullet going up to number 1. But if you want to go listen to the Peacock and Williamson podcast from earlier on in the week, we went into the details of the Herschel Walker trade, and it is an insane trade that could never happen now, just with players getting traded that were conditional, and the players got cut, which became other draft picks for the Cowboys. And then the Ricky Williams trade's probably number 2 for me, but a clear top 3 in NFL history is the Ricky Williams, the Herschel Walker, and now Deshaun Watson with a bullet. Ricky Williams was every draft. They traded their entire draft plus a first and a third the following year. That was just Mike Ditka being Mike Ditka saying, I want this guy. I don't care what the cost is. And didn't really end up working out. But even that one, it's like you got a rookie version of a dynamic running back. That's better than an old washed up version of a Herschel Walker. and it costs more for Herschel Walker. So that's why Herschel Walker to me is worse than the Ricky Williams trade. Good stuff there. Thanks, everybody, for making Locked On 49ers your first listen. Make sure for your second listen, you are subscribed to the Locked On NFL channel. That is the home of the Peacock and Williamson NFL show on YouTube. We're coming at you daily talking about the entire league. Croc doing Locked On NFL Draft daily. And Croc and I are going to be back Friday right here. Locked On 49ers.